Hi, hello, welcome back, crypto. No, it's not. I'm on the wrong channel. What am I talking about? It's me, Devaraj, with my therapy channel, and I thought I'd just get in and do a live stream, trying to get them a bit more consistent. Let me make sure I've got the right chat thing done. I'm always getting it on the wrong one for some reason. I don't know quite how I do that. Anyway, it's been, quite a big week, a big month for me, really. I've had like a workshop after workshop to run. And then last weekend I moved, I got my flat in Brighton, in the middle of Brighton, in the south of the UK. And then had Project Man at the weekend, and that was a great group. That was a fucking great group. For a non-residential, daytime group, God, it went so deep, it's such a special kind of space that's created when men get together and start to trust, and then individuals can get up and just really share about stuff that's going on in their life and get the load off, or do some psychodrama exercises where you really clear out stuff you're holding with your mum or your dad or whatever. One of the hardest things about being a guy in today's world is just it's still so taboo to talk about what's happening inside. It's still so taboo somewhere. And I really love holding space where, sorry, I'm just going to get a bit of tea. Holding space where that taboo is no longer operating, where that taboo is no longer operating. And people just feel like, hey, they can, I can let it go. I can offload. And I had guys of all ages in the group, mostly from 18 to early 50s. And everyone, just moved and changed. So I'm feeling very excited about it. I've got another one. My website's down at the minute, but I'm going to promote it soon. Coming up right at the beginning of May, the first weekend in May in Brighton, non-residential again. And if you're a guy out there and you're carrying stuff around, on an emotional level, this will be such a good weekend to really clear a lot out, to develop a better bond of trust with men and to let go a lot of the past. Also very chuffed, assisted by my mate Dinesh, who was a star and played various roles in the psychodrama. Anyway, so all is good. I got a bioenergetics group again at the weekend, a little one-day thing down in Brighton, and I'm looking this year to step up a bit, really, and to also just start creating a bit better quality content and to take myself a little more seriously at times, and just to see where I'm not really, I like doing my videos quite ad hoc, but of course they could be a lot more professional, and I want to start doing that in my new flat where I've got space to create a little bit of a studio and to maybe have a little bit of a backdrop and just get it a little more professionally finished, maybe with some of those little intros and outros and stuff. And also to really create the content that people want and need. A lot of people ask me for many different variations on the bow and arch and different lengths of time to do it up and down and stuff like that. So I want to start creating that. I want to get into the habit of creating, one video a day, one video every 2 days or so for this channel. And to really push this work out there a bit and look who's interested. I was listening to, I went to see Elliot Hulse when he was in London, and he invited me to go along. That was in October, November. And I just saw the interview. It was just posted, but he did with Brian Rose the day after, and it'd be great to get Brian Rose to do some bioenergetics, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. He runs this channel called London Real, if you don't know him. And, he's really, in the last 5 years, taken a lot of stuff on. But there's also a lot of stuff that he, people are just learning about. I'm on the edge. I'm on the cutting edge. The cutting edge when it comes to the positivity movement. It's all mostly mind stuff, and very few people are really working with the body, and I'm working with the body. So I'd like to get some contact with him, maybe get him doing some bioenergetics and show him the potential of it, because I can also see, seeing his body, he would benefit from it. Anyway, if you're watching and you've got a question, feel free to stick it out, that's what I'm here for. I don't often bite. I do occasionally, but sometimes biting can be good. I don't know. I was really happy with the group at the weekend. I mean, we went out every night for a little bit of a celebration as well. That was always fun at the end of a hard day's working on our issues. And I just felt, I don't know, I just felt very, very satisfied completing this Project Man group, because I think somewhere that's the kind of workshop I'm meant to be leading, you know. So I've already booked another one for a couple of months' time, and I'll be out there promoting that away. Later this month, 3-day bioenergetics intensive called Spiritual Boot Camp. If you're turned on to my work, if you want to work with me for a few days, check that out. You can find it on the Osho Leela website, or you can also just look underneath any of my normal YouTube videos, basically. And sorry, it's half reading someone's foible of mine to do about 2 things at once. Problem of mine, really. Anyway, you know, you can check it out, Spiritual Boot Camp, to get a chance to work for 3 days with me, really going quite deep into bioenergetic process and letting go a lot of the past from the body and from the mind. That's coming up February 21st for 3 days. Okay, the ABCD. Hey, man, how exactly does confrontational therapy work, and can you bypass the usual defenses there to be generally aggressive? When you say, you see, it's not so much about bypassing in a sense, what it is, but it's that might not give quite the right kind of understanding. You know, essentially in the Project Man group, for example, you know, where I do, you know, kind of psychodrama, confrontational psychodrama, there's not really a technical therapeutic word for it. But essentially what happens is, you know, the guys sit down in a crescent, and we've got a little bit of space at the front here. And anyone who wants to can come up and talk about stuff that's going on in their life. And, you know, if you did that off the street, you wouldn't say shit, because you don't know the guys and you don't trust them. But when you've been doing process work all day and you've been kind of angry with the guys, you've been crying with the guys, you've been in all your feelings, you start to create such a deep bond. You realize, you know, one guy gets up and all you want to do is support him. It's a very special space when it's just guys. You know, there's no women to distract us, and you can really get into some good process work. So one at a time, a guy get up, maybe he shares something, you know, he's never shared anything with someone before, something he's really ashamed of, but he's been carrying inside like a weight inside of him, you know, and he gets appreciated for it. Maybe he wants to talk about his relationship with his mum or his dad. Someone can play some of those roles, and he can go into some of the pain, some of the anger, be witnessed by the other men, you know, other people support him in that, you know, it's powerful stuff. Or if it's someone stuck in the nice guy who just can't bear to really, you know, speak up for himself, you know, just have a challenge, shouting out at the other men, you know, I don't give a fuck what you think, whatever it is, you know, it's like, it bypasses the defenses in the sense that you create trust. And because it's a very special space when men come together, men very rarely come together in a context like this. You just don't see it. And when you do, you realize that somewhere inside of you as a man is this capacity to just drop your defenses. It is there, but we're so trained out in the world that we're always on the alert, you know. But when you can see other guys are coming from their hearts, and you've got a whole age range of men there, you know, it's like you just feel like, fuck, I'm not going to hold this shit in anymore. I'm not going to hold it in anymore. I'm just going to talk about what's going on, and I'm going to be open to maybe having a little challenge in front of the other men to go beyond my fears, you know. And once you do that and it's witnessed by others, you know, something shifts inside of you permanently. Something shifts. It's not like your whole story of repression or whatever is gone in one moment, but something big shifts. And that's what we were seeing at the weekend, you know, some huge shifts. It was completely amazing process work. So in the daytimes, you know, we start with some bioenergetics, some real screaming and shouting kind of processes, you know, the sort of thing that if you're a nice guy, you think, my God, I'd never do that. But once the energy starts to move, you just think, fuck it, I'm going in and I'm going to do it. Then I do a bit of theory, you know, and take questions about people's lives or issues or anything they want to know about bioenergetics or, you know, group therapy, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, there's a few breaks in between as well. We do some more bioenergetics to keep the body open. Maybe some chance to share one-to-one what's going on for you and talk about your life more with other men. And then we do 2 or 3 hours of this kind of confrontational psychodrama at the end, where, like I say, guys can get up individually. So, you know, I mean, it's just a fucking awesome workshop, basically. And I just see that so many men could benefit from it. There are men's groups going on, you know, there is work going on. The Mankind Project has been going for many years and does some excellent stuff. But it doesn't have so much the body-based component. And I wanted to bring that in, not to say it's better than that, but just to say that it's different. And it picks up different elements in the male psyche. It picks up stuff from the body. What's very important for me as a therapist and workshop leader is that I'm not just reprogramming you to be someone different. You know, my work is to take out the blocks. I take out the blocks, and then what you're left with is your authentic you know, your authentic self. So I'm turned on to Project Man at the moment, and all the work I'm doing, really. I'm also planning to start a group called Say No, you know, which will be a one-day workshop for people who feel they're stuck in the nice guy mode or good girl mode or whatever. You know, just a one-day intensive in Brighton where you can come along and really practice some quite intense confrontational work in a carefully held environment. You know, and that can really move people. You know, once you get that no coming through from your belly, you know, a lot of things in your life will start to change. This is very useful for the nice guys and the victims, the doormats, and all of these people. Let's have a look at the chat. Hello, Leah. Okay, so if you're watching and you got a question, feel free to stick it out, because that's what I like to receive a few questions. And I always think, oh God, old trolls are going to come back and start whining on again. Hey, TMO, good evening, man. Yeah, you know, so I'm turned on to Project Man at the minute. I think it's really kicking, and hopefully we can get another good group coming along in May, and you know, really get guys moving their stuff. You know. So, like I say, if you're watching and you've got a question, just stick it out. Stick it out. I'm still doing my personal bioenergetic practice of like bow and arch, in a kind of with somatic breathing. You know, about 14 minutes down, 40 minutes up, and then 40 minutes down again. It's a fucking killer sometimes, you know. But I'm getting very interested in pain, you know, and how to actually, on a weird kind of sense, welcome pain in a sense. You know, or actually when you're in a posture and you really get into that edge of it, you're right on the edge of your comfort zone, and that comfort driven part of the ego is just, you know, determined to find a way that you're just going to stop the pose, how to kind of breathe more deeply and somewhere say yes to the pain. I've also been doing it as part of cold training, staying in environment 0 degrees Celsius and doing this long 45-minute, 1 hour long bow and arch, essentially. It's quite amazing. Let's have a little look. Is there something you can do as a woman, some bioexercise to open the zone, the pelvic pressure? Do you dysfunctional breath is like closed? Well, you know, I've got some great pelvic exercises for men or women on my YouTube channel. You can look up, I don't know, just look up pelvis, Devaraj Bioenergetics pelvis or pelvic, and there's quite a few different pelvic exercises that you can do that start to really wake up this area, because, you know, the pelvis is an amazing area of the body, you know, and it has natural, very deeply encoded natural movements to it. You know, I mean, bottom line, if it wasn't for pelvic movement, then none of us would be here, basically. And so in that, there is, when you start to breathe into your pelvis, and there's some lying down structures that I've got there, exercises that I've got there, and you breathe and you get into them, it's more gentle than a lot of the other bioenergetics I teach. And the emphasis is more on feeling. But what happens over time is you do it, and at some point, you often find your pelvis just kind of bumping up and down, seemingly on its own. Because when your pelvis gets moving naturally, what it can do is to literally free up the rest of your body. It's quite incredible. It's quite incredible. It's much too free. Yeah, you don't have to try and bump it so much. There's some exercises on there. I don't know if you've done them, Leah, but message me if you have, with the pelvis rocking and pelvis rolling. You do them for quite a long time, and you don't push. You know, it's very gentle. You really just stay with it, breathing and feeling, and just making sure you're not spacing out and dropping the exercise, keeping yourself present, maybe with a bit of music on. And you really just keep feeling into the pelvis. You can also do them with a kind of sucking exercise as well. And the sucking exercise reactivates parts of the brain that first came online when you were born, basically, because one of the first things you do, apart from breathing air for the first time when you come out of your mum, is you start to suck on the nipple, basically. And so there's different exercises you can do that temporarily return the brain chemistry to around birth, you know. And those exercises are really useful. It's a very interesting aspect of bioenergetics, because you can reset your brain to that at that time for a while. And when it's in that space, a lot of trauma that's come into your body after birth, you know, from bad stuff that happened or whatever, you know, can start to be released. You know, it's not something that is going to utterly, totally change in one session completely, but over time you can get a lot of change. So check out some of those exercises and get back to me next week and see if let me know if anything moved. You know, if anything moved. There's a lot you can do with the pelvis, you know, to slowly start to free it up. But like I say, don't push. Mustn't push. Hey Luigi, hope you're doing good, man. Haven't heard from you for a while. You still doing any bioenergetics, man? Or you moved on to something else, or it's not working for you right now? I'm still big into it, you know. I'm still big into it. I'm listening to David Goggins a bit at the minute with some audio book of Can't Hurt Me. And, you know, I mean, he's kind of an extreme guy in some ways, but he's got some really interesting opinions on pain, you know, and that I'm finding very, very interesting, you know, going beyond the kind of comfort addicted mind and what happens in that space, you know, when you go on. I don't know if I'd be quite up for running, you know, 135 miles in middle of Death Valley or something like that. I've never been much of a runner, but some of his insights into pain and what's happened to him are very, very revealing. And he's really quite a unique character in that field, I find. Leah, is like the trauma itself makes like a hole in our breath space due to its breathing freeze? Yes, in a way. Yes, in a way. You know, the breathing, we learn to contract and compress our breathing, and we lock our throat. Basically what happens, most trauma happens in early life. Not always, of course. You know, you could have later life trauma in war, or, you know, bad stuff happening to you in the street or whatever. But most trauma comes from early life. And, you know, it gets locked in the body because it's too early for us to feel the intensity of it. And then somewhere, really, the brain ought to just release it. But what happens is we develop this powerful ego up here, and we learn to hold it in by contracting our breath, modifying our behavior, and keeping ourselves. So we create no-go areas inside of our, you know, our emotional world. And, you know, over time, this creates a lot of rigidity and stiffness, you know. And what's needed with bioenergetics, the approach is to slowly start to shift that, to slowly start to get those areas moving and to breathe and feel your way through, you know. So it's learning to breathe a lot more deeply. If you're interested, check out my website more, or look for a workshop. Maybe, I'm not sure where in the world you are. You sound like it could be Latin or Mediterranean, but, you know, check it out. And, you know, there is hope. A lot of stuff can be done. But of course, you have to want it. And when you work with a body, you know, it's not like a quick fix in the mind. You have to be willing to go on a bit of a journey, to appreciate your, you know, that there will be times when you really don't want to do it, you know, and that you need to keep going. And then stuff starts to move. No worries. Hey there. How often bioenergetics in the week? And is it better in the morning or evening? I generally say that, I mean, if you can do it daily, that's great. And if you can do it once a week, that's also great. If you can stick to what's, you know, practical for you. And generally it's better in the morning. The trouble with doing bioenergetics in the evening, and it does work for some people, is that it can stimulate you a bit too much and you can have difficulty sleeping sometimes, you know. And also if you do it in the morning, most people get up in the morning and then you've got the whole day ahead of you. You have a nice clear out in the morning and you just feel more aware at work and, you know, in a more centered space, you can do what you need to do easier. So I would say that, you know, it doesn't really matter how often, you know, the thing is to get into it and to make a program that you can commit to, you know, that's practical and tangible and realistic for you. You know, that's the thing. And then stuff can start to move. Hey, Luigi, here and there, just basic stuff. Bow and arch, belly activation proved too cathartic. We'll have to work out the way to do it in baby steps. Okay, man. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah. So, yeah. I want to, you know, just breathing into the belly, getting in that low position and breathing into the belly is quite powerful. I've also been changing the way I teach it a little bit, or rather adding to the way I teach it a little bit from the original belly activation. I need to do a video for that. I'm moving into this new flat in Brighton. It's got a nice light front room where I can make videos look a little bit more professional. So I want to start to create better quality content and to pick up a lot of these, get a lot more practical videos in and a lot more kind of challenge and workout videos done for people who really want to get into it, you know, because I know a lot of people like to just stick the video on and to follow along. So I aim to do a lot more of that stuff. But what I was saying is you can also do this kind of low grunt with also a little bit of pelvic thrusting or something like that. That's also quite interesting what it does. Thanks for your advice. I have done the triple overnight. After 1 minute, my whole body starts shaking a lot. That's good, man. That's good. You know, if it gets scary, you know, keep breathing and feeling your body. And if it gets really scary, you have to slacken off, you know. But it's a very powerful technique. Once you start to get the belly open, you know, man, it's powerful, you know. That's really powerful, deep stuff. I was in some yogic teaching, said that holding the breath can create stillness in your body to better observe oneself. Is holding the breath and feel the body while doing bioenergetics possible? Well, it's possible, but it's not advised really, you know. Yogic techniques and some meditation techniques use that to try and, you know, so that you can kind of move into a kind of observer and just see what's happening. But my experience, you know, being around the alternative scene and this kind of scenes for like 20 years is that rarely happens to most people. You know, what does happen is they tend to develop a rather delusional ego that they are the observer suddenly, you know, and that's not to in any way disparage Indian Sanskrit, you know, Vedantic teachings or anything like that. You know, I've got a bit of background in that area as well. But in bioenergetics, you know, it's more you're going to go through the emotions, you know, underneath a lot of yogic technique and a lot of satsang, meditation and spirituality is basically a denial of a brutality or the inner, well, not really the brutality, but the depth of emotional wounding inside of us. You know, they're in denial. And the desire is to go from this thought-dominated mind world straight into a deeper state of being, but with avoiding the emotional stuff in between. And in my opinion, it's very rare that someone manages to achieve that, you know. Somewhere you cannot avoid the emotional layer and all the repressed stuff that's in the body, you know. So you have these yogic teachings and they make sense and stuff like that. And certainly elements of Buddhism are doing the same, you know, but I don't recommend it, you know. The great thing about bioenergetics is that you start to get into the emotionality without it usually being too overwhelming, you know. It's actually use it without it being too overwhelming. Simple as that, you know. So, you know, I also teach other therapies one-to-one or in the group room, which I don't do on YouTube, you know, proper full-on emotional expression techniques and stuff like that. And that also takes you deep into the emotions very quickly, you know. But with bio, it's a bit more smooth and deep. Are there exercises with erectile dysfunction caused by anxiety and nervousness? Yeah, sure. You know, the thing to understand with erectile dysfunction, which is something that a lot of guys are worried about, you know, is that the more you are in your body, feeling your body, the more it will have natural responses that will last when you are sexually aroused by someone. You know, it'll, you know, the anxiety starts to move over time. You need to be willing to commit for a while, you know, and if you are, you know, just doing the bow and arch will start to take out a lot of anxiety. You don't necessarily have to work in the same area where the anxiety relates to. So if someone has sexual anxiety, erectile dysfunction or whatever, you know, and there's female versions of that as well, of course, you know, you don't need to work in the genital area or the pelvic area even. You know, the bow and arch is the best exercise over time for anxiety because most anxiety roots from repressed emotions in the lower back and the backs of the legs and the neck and shoulders. And if you start to clear those areas, then generally over time, anxiety starts to decrease. But, you know, it might take a while, but you will see improvements in stuff. And a good way to start it, if you can, is to come to a workshop. If you can't make it to a workshop, you can't, you know, you can do a session online with me and get the exercise really pat. I have a few clients that I teach weekly until they've really got certain exercises. They've absolutely got them. And when you've got that, then you can really start to do it and keep going deeper with it. And a lot of stuff will clear. what happens, particularly with the male psyche, is that they kind of want to skip to the finish line real quick, and they kid themselves that they're doing the exercises when they're only half doing them, and not much is really shifting, you know. So you have to kind of be quite mature with it. But absolutely, you know, I would recommend, you know, bioenergetics for erectile dysfunction. I'd recommend it over time, really. You know, once you're in your body, feeling your body properly, you know, or you're just at least 50% back, you ain't going to have any problems getting erections, basically. Probably be more of a problem getting rid of them sometimes when they're embarrassing you in certain areas, in places, you know. Hope that helps, Iris. Leah, it's like too much difficult search for the feeling which is freezing or bothering your inner self. What about that search? You know, don't go into the mind aspect of it too much. You just need to start to practice feeling the body. Feeling the body. That's all. Not making a story about the body. Not looking for trauma in the body. Just feeling the body. You start to practice breathing and feeling the body. Mindfulness, basically. Mindfulness. And then you take that practice into the bioenergetics with the pelvic work. It's very similar. You know, you're doing very gentle movements of the pelvis, and you just keep breathing and feeling, and over time stuff starts to open up and move. You also need to understand the defensive layer, because that's something that will kick in at some point, and it'll try and take you out of the practice. But, you know, do some sessions or whatever, you can do it. Samurai. Hey, Samurai. Do you think it's better to be observant, face value reality for what it is, or perceptive when seeing hidden subjective means seeing the world? Well, I think it should be both, you know, both. It's good to be able to just take things like they are. You know, sometimes people, they go into too much inner world as a way to avoid the kind of, you know, the bluntness of the world. And I think, you know, you need to be aware of the bluntness of the world and how emotionally provocative it can be, you know. And at the same time, of course, you know, being perceptive is very, very useful, you know, to be able to introspect on your own thinking and behavior, on understanding, you know, what's going on sometimes, yeah, seeing how you're attracted to certain situations, how the outside, certain aspects of the outside world keep on seem to be manifesting in your life. And what is that telling you, you know? So I think both of those things are great, man. Both of those things are great. I'm going to put my kettle on. Feel free to ask any more questions. I fancy a bit more of this tea. A buddy of mine who was a famous tea maker, I mean, he died a few years ago, poor soul, but he left me some of his great Taiwanese or Chinese teas, you know, that have been growing on trees for like 100 years and stuff, you know. Grits, we love it. Cheers, Dev. No worries, man. No worries, you know. The great thing about the bioenergetics, you see, is like once you've learned some level of self-feeling and self-observation, you can speed up the process by which you engage with your stuff, you know, because the postures with the breathing, they open up areas of the muscle system where there is repression, you know, where there is repression. So you start to integrate a lot of stuff. And it's great to start with a practice of mindfulness, or to also complete with just sitting and breathing and feeling. You know, it can give you, you know, just 10 minutes of sitting, say, after doing a bioenergetic session in the morning, can put you in quite a bliss state for the day, and not to be sniffed at. Hey, let me get my hot water. I mean, I've been kind of busy and charging around a bit recently, getting my new flat and loads of workshops in January. But I do really enjoy it on a day when I'm not super busy, you know, just to do like a 1 hour session of bioenergetics and then just sit for like 15, 20 minutes, listen to a bit of Osho and slowly brew myself a cup of tea, cook a little bit of bacon or something, bit of black pudding, something like that, and just sit in a real meditative space. I mean, it can be absolutely blissful, you know, and it's always a little bit of a shame when I kind of charge in, do my bio, and I have to get moving, you know, because I miss out on that little bliss phase. I mean, it kind of comes with what I'm doing anyway, but it's nothing like giving yourself a space for that, you know, and it can become an oasis of real bliss in your life in the mornings, doing the bio, which can be really challenging, and then just sitting for 5-10 minutes, you know. Is there much value in doing short practices when busy or struggling to overcome resistance doing it? Yes, yes. You know, do what you can. Do what you can, JW, you know, do what you can, you know, because you know, on one level, the deepest thing that you can really do for yourself is to overcome resistance, like you say, to recognize when you don't want to do something and just say, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And if you train yourself like that, I tell you, man, there's not much stopping you in life. Doesn't matter if you're not super good looking. It doesn't matter if you're only 5'1" tall or shorter. It doesn't matter if you're 62 years old and kind of decrepit. It doesn't matter. If you can keep moving and understand your own resistance and move despite it, you know, you can create amazing change in your life. You can do it, you know. Don't give up, you know. And it's like, understand your own resistance. This is the biggest problem, you know, the whole of humanity really has. We're addicted to fucking comfort, man. We're addicted to fucking comfort, you know, and you have to get out of that. I was lucky in a sense in that when I started to do groups back in like 2000, proper group therapy, you know, in Holland, you know, they keep you up all fucking night and things were so structured, you couldn't just do your own thing. In a 24-hour period, you couldn't do your own thing, not for 10 fucking minutes. And that was a nightmare at first because I was used to having lots of downtime when I could space out and kind of go back to my old self. But you had to keep moving. And I learned to keep moving. I learned to keep moving through the night. I learned to keep moving when I just wanted to sit, you know, because I saw the value of it after a year or two, you know, or after some workshops and stuff, you know. I started to see the value of it. But initially, it was just like a fucking nightmare. But unfortunately, you know, you do need something like that to get through the comfort addiction. Unless you're really a David Goggins or someone who's got that kind of special mentality that can almost transcend it, transcend our normal state. Comfort addiction is such an issue in our world. You know, anyone who can overcome it is going to step up like fuck on this planet, really. That's all you actually have to do, is overcome your comfort addiction and be able to push yourself a little bit at times when you know you're stepping back, you know. And if you can keep moving on the edge of your comfort zone forwards, there's fuck all that's going to stop you in life, really. It's that simple. It is that simple. Got to get over the comfort addiction. Got to stop blaming, stop watching telly, you know. I remember listening to this Hasidic Jew guy once, you know, talking about this guy was interviewing him and asking him about how come he didn't allow a television in his house, you know, and he said, same reasons I don't have an open sewer running through my living room. And I thought that was a particularly gifted reply, basically, having been off TV for like 20 years, you know. And I dare say a little bit now and then isn't so bad, but it's undeniably the case that most successful people do not watch television. Something to learn from that. And most successful people do not blame other people. Something to learn from that, you know. And most successful people have good control over their comfort level, their comfort addiction, you know. It's just how it goes, you know. There are certain traits that if you start to learn them and pick them up, then you will rise. You will rise. The lies that we tell ourselves is that it's all about being an alpha. It's all about, you know, it's all about being good looking. It's all about getting the girl, whatever, you know, being successful and all these. It's all about the outside. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's got absolutely jack fuck all to do with the outside. It doesn't matter whether you're good looking or ugly as sin. It doesn't matter whether you're 18 or 78, you know. It really doesn't matter. If you adopt certain behaviors and start to take them on and really be quite rigorous with yourself, you will move up. And it's as simple as that. You will move up. And bioenergetics can be a big part of that. The man who blames others a long way to go on his journey. Yeah, the man who blames himself is halfway there. The man who blames nobody has arrived. Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah. Yeah, blaming yourself can also get to be a bit of an addictive, self-destructive pattern for people, for sure. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. Miyamoto Musashi. Oh, thank you. I'm afraid of Osho due to the Wild Wild Country documentary. I think that means it's like Star Wars in real life, the dark side of light. I know I was using that, but I get. Well, you know, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? You know, if you like Osho or not, you know. Bioenergetics doesn't really have so much to do with Osho. You know, I'm a Osho sannyasin, you know. I wasn't in Oregon, you know, and I wasn't in Pune either. Well, I have been in Pune, but only after Osho passed away. I mean, he died 30 years ago and I was quite young then. not super young, but quite young. And the thing is, something like bioenergetics, don't. Sometimes people say, well, it's Osho stuff, as though they're suddenly going to turn to a member of a cult by doing the bow and the arch. But hopefully, in sort of 2019, people don't feel they can get away with quite such a feeble escape route. The truth was that, around Osho, because he was quite into therapy, we made a lot of statements that Westerners needed to do therapy. A lot of therapists, particularly kind of radical ones from West Coast America, New York and Germany and stuff like that, in the UK, they all went over to Pune and went over to Oregon, and they kind of started running groups for people, and, and a lot of new therapies emerged from that, from a kind of coalition of therapists. And then Osho left, or they dropped their sannyas name, their Sanskrit name, and they just and they dropped their name and went back to just working, but with amazing gifts, really, and it was just that he created a kind of melting pot environment. I never saw the Wild Wild Country documentary. My girlfriend saw it, said it was half good, half bad, whatever, and of course, we've got to build it up. But if you listen to Osho, you rarely encounter someone, I think, who's got that level of awareness, who's speaking, because he was a professor of philosophy in India for years and years and years, and, and an utter rebel. I don't think in the history of humankind anyone has been as rebellious as Osho. He was a god of rebels. You see, he was just a god of rebels. No one was as rebellious as him. This little 4'6" high guy who stood up to the whole American government and just did what the fuck he wanted. I mean, to someone like me who was always a rebel but not on the same kind of level, I had to admire him. The story I always loved about Osho was, after he'd been thrown out of America in the mid-80s, and he was a lot of money, and people had given him loads of money and stuff, so he had this private jet, and they were flying him around the world looking for places where he could settle again, because he didn't want to go back to Pune, where he'd come from, Pune, India. And they wouldn't have him in Uruguay. The Americans applied pressure, and he went to a few other countries, and the Americans applied, diplomatic pressure, saying, we don't want you taking this guy in. And then he went to Greece, and it looked for a little bit like Greece, quite poor. Thought, well, having 20,000 quite rich followers, because they were quite rich, a lot of his followers, wouldn't be bad for the country's economy. Maybe we'll have Osho, And so they said, let's have a press conference with this guy, Rajneesh, as he was known then. And so they had this press conference, And you'd expect, if he wanted to stay there and not have to go back to Pune, he would say something nice in the press conference, and be kind of beneficent towards the local people and their traditions. So, they asked him in his press conference, what do you think of the Greek religion, the Greek Orthodox Church? And you'd expect him to come up with a diplomatic answer. And he said, well, if you ask me, it's a gay religion, because there's the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, and they're all men. So, of course, the archbishops in Greece had some kind of heart attack at this. It was published in the front page of all the newspapers, and they threw him out the next day. And poor old sannyasins were pretty upset, But, he wasn't bothered. You see, when you're liberated to a certain degree, the entire planet is literally yours. It really does not matter what people think, other people think or do. You're completely unconcerned with it, because you're free on a deep inner level. And yes, there was a lot of crazy shit that took place around him as well, But anyway, he's not here anymore, so it's not likely to come and get you now. So I don't think you have to be totally afraid of it. And I never saw this documentary, but I'm sure they're making it a bit scandalous. I mean, also, what was the case? It was the 70s, and a lot of people wanted to have sex. A lot of young people wanted to shag, and so they basically, they kind of almost projected onto Osho that he was this kind of tantric sex guru, which was not really the case. Maybe a little bit, but not really. And it was like they all went over to see him and then said, "The master says we have to have sex. Let's go for it," because he's telling us. It was like giving themselves permission to go sexually crazy for a few years, basically. And that was a big factor also in the Osho scene. But it was a lot of people who were massively into sex, basically, just kind of conveniently for them, assuming he was a sex guru and deciding that's what they would go for. One of the Rinpoche's, it's a famous Tibetan lineage, said that the Bhagwan Osho, as he later became known, was the final reincarnation of some, I can't remember, one of a great sort of Buddhist tantrics or something. which made sense to me. The craziest manifestation, I think. I like very much Osho's stuff, like the dynamic meditation. It left very good material in the end. Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, he was quite a gift to the world, really. You know, he was quite a gift to the world. He didn't live so long. Probably he got poisoned, it looks like, you know, that's what they always said, you know, in the end. And certainly the Americans were very threatened by him, basically, you know. Reagan's government, you know, was not into Osho at all. And they felt threatened. They felt threatened because it wasn't just a bunch of hippies and yoga kind of long-haired yoga hippies going to see him. It was doctors, dentists, lawyers. It was people with a lot of money, essentially from middle-class America, who were turned on to what he was doing and who went, you know. And that was, of course, threatening to the Reagan administration. So they had to deal with it. Hey, Gibberer. First live chat I've caught in a while. Yeah, man. I don't remember you for a few months, I don't think. Cool. You've come near the end, really. I'll probably do a little bit more. So if anyone's got a question, an exciting question about their body or process or something they want to put out, then just go for it. How often do you do bioenergetics? I do it most days, pretty much most days. And it's very dangerous to overdo it. Well, I think you've got to be careful when you first do it, you know, because you know, you can't really pull muscles when you can fully feel the muscle, but most people cannot fully feel the muscles, especially muscles where there's a lot of holding and repression. So, you know, if you're the kind of person that gets super enthusiastic about something and does it like crazy and then drops it 2 weeks later, it's probably not too good to get into to bio unless you can change that attitude a bit. You know, you don't want to push it so much that you could hurt yourself. But I think certainly you could do half an hour a day. And be fine, you know. Certainly half an hour a day, maybe to start, would be a good upper limit, I would say, ideally in the morning. Hope you're well. Samurai, I never understood the need to have a master. That's weak to me. Well, it depends what you're trying to achieve, I suppose. You know, depends what you're trying to achieve, you know. If you feel, you know, that on your own you can, if you want, say, liberation, enlightenment, or something like that, and you feel that on your own you can make it, then I would say, you know, of course you're just going to go for it, you know. But if you feel that, you know, having a master is a sign of weakness, then probably that is saying something about your inner psychological dynamic, in my opinion. Being the kind of person who can have similar views. Whenever I was around masters, you know, and I've followed a few, as they say, you know, it would always be challenging for me to surrender. You know, I had a very tightly controlled ego from my early childhood and probably some level of genetic predisposition. And it was not easy for me to surrender in any way or means. But over time, bit by bit, and now I'm not really involved with masters anymore. But, you know, I have my daily practice, which moves me deeper slowly. And that works for me. You know, it works for me. Some people are on a more of an individual path, perhaps. But there's whole different traditions with this kind of stuff, you know. What I see is that there's a lot of potential these days for quite a big awakening to happen, you know, and especially around something like bioenergetics, especially around something like understanding, you know, the comfort addiction and how to go beyond it, you know. In many ways, maybe it'll happen if our society collapses more, you know. Maybe it'll happen if that happens. You know, I certainly think for, say, a country like the UK where I'm living, you know, and I'm half British, a country like the UK, you know, it could serve it a lot to have quite a strong collapse, really, to start to break down some of the traditions that have grown up in the last few years and everything, and get people a bit more centered and real, you know, create a better hierarchy, essentially, create a better hierarchy. So, you know, I see that as a way forward. And if something like that happens, it also creates potential where real new leaders can come up and direct people much deeper, you know. Dun, 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 dun. Which emotions exactly get released while doing the bow, respectively, the arch? Well, it's not so much that you can say exactly which emotions. The bow and arch work a lot on the lower back and the backs of the legs, particularly the arch. And then also the bow, if you really stretch with the arms, works on the shoulders as well. And the two positions seem to complement each other in a way I've never heard anyone be able to adequately describe or understand. But they open up areas of a muscle system where feelings are repressed. The two standard axes of intense emotion are anger and pain. And usually both are repressed, but some people may be more comfortable with one than the other. You know, and when you can fully express anger and fully express pain without any fear or holding, you know, then you've probably got a high level of psychological health. But you cannot really track those feelings exactly to certain areas of the body. It doesn't really work like that. 20, 30 years ago, it would be popular to say that, I mean, you can to a little degree when you look at somatic centers, but that's slightly different. It's also an area of bioenergetics. But 20 years ago, it was popular to say that this certain muscles held anger. The masseter muscle was always a favorite. This muscle that runs from your cheekbone down to the lower jawbone here. You know, if you grind into this muscle, if it really hurts, you've got a lot of anger stored in there. And certainly see people kind of chewing on feelings sometimes where you can see the anger's come up and it hasn't quite got out. It's kind of held on the surface all the time. But, you know, a little, and I don't really think that's true. It's more, there's a level of energetic blockage. Emotions are just energy, really. They're just energy, you know, with a certain emotional dynamic to it. That's all, that's how I see them. And with bioenergetics, you start to free the whole body up. And, yeah, you just develop more emotional openness and more comfort with intense emotions, you know, to be deeply vulnerable, to be totally fucking enraged. You know, it becomes comfortable and you kind of know it. When you look at the field of bioenergetics, there's also the way that you can look at somatic centers where there's also a lot of holding. Apart from just repressed feelings, they hold around the throat, hold around the heart and the back of the heart, and hold around the belly. Not going to stand up, but you know where it is. And those kind of areas, there is a bit more emotional specificity to, whatever the word is. Back of the heart in particular is where we suppress pain, emotional pain, and the gut is more where we suppress anger. But it's not exact, you know, you can't make little maps, unfortunately. Mastery is like having inspiration. Yes, exactly, you know. Sometimes I can just sit and listen to Osho and feel really moved, like I've just moved into a much deeper plane inside myself from where I was 10 minutes before. Any tips for shutting up the chattering mind? Most days I can concentrate fairly well on the exercises, but sometimes my mind chatters so much I feel I'm getting nowhere. Well, you know, the chattering mind also comes up as part of an overall defensive strategy when you're actually doing bioenergetic postures, you know. So really the thing is you can't really stop it. You know, you can't really make it. It doesn't have an off switch that we've discovered yet, you know. So somewhere you have to be okay with it, but use it as a little bit of a signpost when your mind is getting excessively busy and you catch it's getting excessively busy, to come back and really feel the body and breathe in the posture. Because what's likely happening is something is trying to move. But as it comes up, you know, you may have seen some of the diagrams I've done of this, as it gets towards your awareness, certain defensive responses from the mind and body are triggered. And they basically try to get you to stop doing the pose or to stop feeling your body. So certain stories start revolving round and round, and the defense mechanism is trying to get your awareness back in the stories. And it might go there for a while, and then you realize, shit, I'm really in my head. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that. Come back to breathing and feeling the body, because when it's most triggered is usually when it's something trying to really move. So you want to get that, eh? You really want to get that. Thank you for that question. It's a question a lot of people have, I'm sure. While doing the bow, I have a lot of pressure in my lower back and it really hurts after a minute or so. Is it normal or could it be dangerous? It depends if you have any physical injuries there or history of operations in that area. If not, or severe postural stuff like scoliosis or something like that. If not, and it is quite common. In fact, recently, a lot of people have been telling me this, some of my clients. But like often people talk about doing the bow, they start to get slightly underneath the mid-back, a ridge of intense tension. And what I would say with that, if you don't have any, you know, history of severe physical trauma or, you know, operations in that area or anything like that, then is to try and hold the position in a way that is on the edge of your comfort zone and keep breathing. And I believe over time stuff will start to move. There's a lot of people who are kind of cut around the midriff, somewhere around the solar plexus. It's quite common in my experience. I never had that so severely, but myself I had lots of other blocks. But it's curious, but recently a lot of people have been in my sessions. It rarely seems to go by without someone suddenly coming up with it, you know. So it is quite common. For posture, sometimes what you can do is put your heels up, have your toes on the floor, and take your heels onto like a book, you know, to take them like a centimeter or two off the floor and try that. because sometimes there's postural problems with the ankles, and that resolves it. Otherwise, you know, just go into it and try to hold it on the edge of your comfort zone. Sometimes I have people come to my workshop, and when they've got this thing around here, around the upper part of the lower back, they're kind of shaking, or they're twisting, moving backwards and forwards a lot, or something like this. And you want to try and be more steady as much as you can, and really just find right on the edge of your comfort zone, where it's really on the edge of pain. And in that position, really start to breathe through the mouth deep, you know, and just give that a try and see if something can move from it. You can also look at using a bioenergetic stool and trying to move some back stuff like that. You know, again, take it easy. You don't want to fuck your back up. I never heard of anyone really fucking their back up doing bioenergetics, you know. I mean, sometimes, of course, you could pull a muscle in your lower back when you're not aware of them. But, you know, otherwise, I never heard of any severe trauma ever happening in 20 years of being around the scene. But, you know, it's good to always treat your body with respect. J-Dub, I don't feel with Kundalini, how it can cause all kinds of havoc. Do you have an experience of interaction in Kundalini? Well, yeah, I've had these kind of experiences myself, but what I see with Kundalini and people who've had Kundalini experiences, they need to do therapy, basically. There's a whole kind of world out there of people sharing about their endless spiritual Kundalini experiences, and it often seems to me like a colossal ego trip, you know. So the main thing I advise people who've got Kundalini stuff going on, if they're getting too in the head with their spirit thing, you know, then, you know, go for like group therapy, you know, go for stuff where you have to really open up about your childhood and talk about it, because that tends to integrate Kundalini things better in my experience. And bioenergetics is also great. Sometimes you can have so much shaking going on in the body that literally it's very hard to really to even remotely stay in the posture. But it's still releasing something. It's still releasing something. I've worked a lot in this field, and my recommendation, though usually the Kundalini people don't want to take it, is to do more like proper group therapy, or therapy where you're really having to talk about your childhood, all the stuff that's gone on. That to me is the fastest route to clear it in my experience. Hope that's helpful. Nick, hi. What are your thoughts around combining flotation tanks and yeah, go for it, man. Flotation tanks and bioenergetics sounds great. Used to do a bit of the old flotation tanks years ago when I had a girlfriend who worked in this health center where they had some, and that was pretty cool. But when you really space out and you get the Epsom salts in your mouth, it's a bit of a rude awakening. But yeah, man, I think that sounds pretty good. Also, do you push pelvis forwards during the box? I think you mean Bo, I guess, in a kind of tucking tailbone in motion to rotate the hips forwards. I mean, I just push the pelvis forwards. I mean, my posture isn't brilliant. I had ankle problems, and ankle operations when I was a kid in my Achilles. But like, basically, I do it something like this, you know, just stretching the pelvis forwards as much as I can, pushing the chest out, arms up and arms back, and then eyes open, head looking straight ahead, not looking up at the sky. That's the way I learned it. You know, other postures, and then breathe, you know. So I'm really just pushing as though there's a block here, pushing me forwards, you know. It's not really so much tucking, though maybe because of my slight postural problems, you know, other people might want to do it differently. But, you know, pushing there, looking to really hold the position and find the edge of a comfort zone if it's painful. You know, if it's painful, find the edge of your comfort zone and try and just stay there and keep staying there. Like I said, with the lower back, if you've got issues and stuff, you can also look at using a bioenergetic stool or a yoga foam roller or something like that. Okay, guys, I've got a couple of minutes. Dum-dum. How did Project Man go? It was fucking great, man. It was fucking great, really. You know, a really great group of guys, all different ages from 18 to early 50s. And everyone took a lot away from it, you know. I mean, it's just a good formula. I thought it would be. I've worked with it a little bit similar in Man Up, which is a men's group I've been running, or co-running rather, for a few years. And yeah, my biggest takeaway from it is that you know, what I really see is, you know, once the guys get together and you do some bioenergetics and some emotional exercises, you know, you see other men going through feelings. And when we come to the final part, if you look back in this video, because I talked a bit about it earlier and someone else asked me a question, to the kind of psychodrama, confrontational psychodrama element, you know, men are just ready to give it up in an all-male environment when there's no women to distract us after a few hours of working on yourself and doing group process work. You know, it's like you're ready to just talk about the stuff you're ashamed of and let it go. You're ready to talk about your relationship with your mum and your dad and really let it go, you know. So a lot of healing happened, and a lot of, you know, masculinity was stepped up. My biggest takeaway was just, it is just revolutionary when men get together, you know, on their own in a carefully held space. So much can shift in that space, you know, so much. Thank you for that question, Nick. And I'm going to leave you guys. Feel free to like and subscribe. Think I'm back next week, trying to think a week ahead. What am I doing? Yes, I should be back next week. So all should be good. Okay. Remember, keep doing the bioenergetics. Keep stepping up. Thanks, guys. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Appreciate it.